And hi, everyone. I'm Josh Elliott. We have a lot to get to on this Friday, but we begin this hour in Charlotte, where there is now growing pressure on investigators to release the videos showing the shooting of Keith Lamont Scott, a black man who was killed by police earlier this week. In a news conference just moments ago, in fact, the chief of police explained why they are still waiting for that release.
It's a matter of when, and it's a matter of sequence. And as I said before, I wish the video, any video, even the cases we made from 2 days ago, I wish just based on video evidence, it could give us probable cause, but it doesn't work that way. And the reason I want to release it when I can give more supportive information is because if it's proving our case or proving our case should go in a different direction, the only way to do that is to be able to establish probable cause. And what I can tell you is the video evidence in that case didn't get us to that standard solely.
David Begnaud has been covering the unrest there from the very beginning. And David, again, you were in that news conference with the chief of police and the mayor. Lots to get to, but first for you, what struck you?
The fact that nothing that the public has done to put pressure on the department has done anything to sway the chief. Now, let me be very clear about this. The chief has said the same thing from the beginning. You do not see Mr. Scott pointing a weapon at the officer in the video. We've heard from the mayor now today and from the family attorney after viewing the video that it appears Mr. Scott had something in his hand. The witnesses say it was a book. The police say we can't tell for sure. The chief has said the same thing, and he did it again today in saying, if I release that video that doesn't solely show him pointing the weapon at my officers and make it justifiable to everyone from the get-go, then I am doing a disservice if I release it saying, well, we're not exactly sure what it is. The idea is, Josh, they've got to build a case with witnesses, with statements from the officers, and then marry that with the video to come up with the conclusion that it was either justified or unjustified. Also, I thought it was poignant today that the chief seemed to indicate, he said, I have trust issues of my own. And then he said to me, talk to my homicide guys. Talk to them about the nuances that go into the decision-making of whether or not to release a video like this. I got the sense, I don't know this for sure, but I got the sense that the chief may be getting some pressure behind the scenes because perhaps he does want to get it out sooner, but his men, the people he listens to and trusts, are telling him, Chief, we can't do it no matter how bad it appears in the public.
Well, if he does feel that way, it would echo the feelings of Mayor Jennifer Roberts, who has said that she actually had to be convinced to wait and not compromise the integrity of the investigation, a phrase we've heard turned now for several days. Interestingly, though, David, we did hear from the police chief day one say that while perhaps not overwhelmingly conclusive was the video evidence that he had seen, and he has not even been precise about just how much he has seen, he did say that the totality of the evidence would support the actions taken by the officers. It would seem then that the police, considering what it is we know and really don't know about the video evidence in question, are now going to be reliant on eyewitness accounts to make their case.
Yesterday during demonstration.
Yeah, look, it's a very wordy explanation, Josh. I got to be honest with you. But let me go back to the initial press release. The authorities were more forthcoming with details immediately after the shooting than I'm accustomed to getting from, police agencies after an officer-involved shooting. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department said almost immediately after the shooting that Mr. Scott posed an immediate danger to the officers involved. Now, what gave them reason to believe that? Was it the videos they saw initially? Was it the statements from the officers? I don't know. But that statement is pretty damning in what they know that he was an imminent danger to those officers. Now, we have heard from sources who have seen the video that Mr. Scott appears to be drifting backwards. The family says in their statement that he was walking backwards. We were told by a source that he was kind of drifting, but you saw something in his hand. The family source has told us it's clear he had something in his hand. The question is, what was it? Was it a gun? The witnesses at the scene say it was a book. I got to tell you, on social media, we've gotten a lot of blowback from people who say, but there are witnesses who say he had a gun. So shame on you guys for not talking to them. The bottom line is, my producers and I have walked all over that apartment complex, and the only people who have been willing to talk have said the same thing to a T. He had a book, and he did not have a gun. Now, is that a matter of someone hearing from the other person and now they're all singing the same song? Maybe. But that's what the people at that apartment complex are saying. And if there's somebody else who's saying he had a gun, they're not talking to us.
We should point out that the civil rights activist who led the initial press conference at that apartment building also, when asked about the state of Keith Scott specifically, made a since heretofore unsubstantiated statement regarding his mental state, suggesting perhaps that there was, as he, in his words, some sort of mental issue with regard to Keith Scott. I wonder if that has been followed up upon, and also with regard to the family, David. They have now seen this video, and one of the initial reasons given by the police chief for not releasing the video was because they wanted at least the family to see it first. The family has now seen it. The family has said they want it released. It certainly seems as though this department, if nothing else, has been backed into something of a corner here.
Perhaps, but let me back up to the first question you asked regarding the disability of Mr. Scott. That was floated initially, and here's what we've been able to gather. Yesterday, I asked Justin Sandberg, one of the attorneys for the Scott family, what about that disability? He told us that Mr. Scott was involved in a very bad accident, as he termed it, about a year ago, and that Mr. Scott had some physical and mental disabilities. Here's why the disability issue is very important. Josh, you may recall that after the shooting, there was a Facebook Live video that was done by a woman identifying herself as a daughter of Mr. Scott, and that video really inflamed people. That video got the eyes of the nation watching. I mean, it got nearly 500,000 views in about 3 hours, right? So the disability was kind of the crux. Did they go after a disabled man, people were asking. It doesn't appear that that was the case. It's just that he had this accident, so he may not have been able to work. That's the answer to the first question. To follow up with what you said, the family wants the public to see it. Is that now putting the onus on the police department to say, okay, we showed it to the family, now we've got to show it to the public? Maybe. But the chief has not wavered in his statement. But he did say this today, Josh, and I thought this was interesting. Now he's sort of laying the issue at the foot of the State Bureau of Investigation, because it's been turned over to them now. So now he's able to say, hey, listen, it's not up to me. You got to go talk to them. So now it's now we got to start making phone calls to try and figure out, are they going to release it? A real quick follow-up about this curfew. You might remember yesterday at the press conference, I asked the chief, what about a curfew? And he said, at this point, I don't think we need one. And I kind of pressured him a bit, and I said, you don't think you need one after a night of violence like we had yesterday? And so we finally found out the reason a curfew was requested, and the mayor acknowledged and signed the order for it, is because around 8 p.m., 9 p.m. last night, they got intelligence that a group from South Carolina, as the chief described as being potentially violent, was headed here to Charlotte. The chief asked for a curfew. He got it, and the curfew started at midnight. It's going to happen every night now. Midnight, it's going to end at 6 a.m., and it will continue until the state of emergency is lifted.
Again, those will be decisions for Chief Putney. As you mentioned, though, as he noted before he began his remarks, this will be the final update that he'll deliver, as you mentioned. It has been turned over to the State Bureau of Investigation. He noted that he knows the expectation that video footage might be a panacea here, but it's simply not the case. And Mayor Roberts seemed to support him, saying that she saw it, but the visual clarity made the two videos that she has seen inconclusive. There was something in his hand, but we won't know what it was. And she did say at one other point, she does see that there are now issues in the community, disparities in the community, and that they do need to address that. So I suppose rather that will be where this is left. Meanwhile, I know you mentioned there is a curfew in place again for tonight. Do you know, or to the best of your knowledge, what is planned, if anything is planned tonight with regard to protest in the city?
No, we've not heard anything specific, Josh. In fact, last night was the first night where we didn't really hear where there may be any protests, but then we saw people congregating on various corners. And then as it moved toward 9, 10 o'clock last night, that's when, I mean, it looked to be nearly 1,000 people on the street in various places around the city center. So we don't know about specific protests, but you've got the National Guard that will be back out tonight along with the state police. And I have to tell you, now that the Guard and the state police have come in conjunction with local law enforcement, it is a heck of a police police presence. And more than one person has said to me on the street, I think that presence last night was one reason things were pretty calm.
At this flashpoint of tragedy, excellent work throughout the week, David. We do appreciate the time today.
You bet.